Good evening, film lovers, friends, and audiences of all kinds. Thank you so much for coming out and joining us to be part of the OFFA's winter screening series tonight. We hope you enjoyed watching Ballistic right here on the biggest of movie screens tonight, and we're so glad you've decided to join us after the movie for the exclusive Q&A package. You might notice there's this handsome guy right next to me. This is the writer and director of Ballistic, Chad Faust. He's joining us from South Carolina tonight, zooming in for an exclusive package just for you, our local Oakville audience. Now, this is being pre recorded. There's currently a snowstorm outside. We couldn't arrange for a live event this week, so we wanted to pre record a special interview that you just get to enjoy. My name is Tyler Collins. I'm one of the hosts here with the OFFA. I'm also the arts reporter for Oakville News. You can read us online for free every day at oakvillenews.org. Now, we don't have any submitted questions today. We've just prepared a short conversation between Chad and I. We hope you enjoy this exclusive featurette. Hi, Chad. How are you this afternoon?
Very good, Tyler. Thanks for having me.
So let's get started by talking about you were both the writer and director on this project. Can you take us through the early stages of development? How did you first come up with the idea for Ballistic?
I think I was in a waiting room of a psychiatrist's office or something like this, and I saw in Newsweek magazine, or I can't even remember which publication it was, some statistic that said 30% of the lead that comes back in American soldiers' bodies was American made. And that just staggered me. And I recognized that I
Of course,
wanted.
that's the inciting incident to the whole story here.
Exactly. And I wanted to find a way to personalize that story, to find a way to make that feel like it was in your bones, and make that real, not just a statistic, but a personal reality. And I actually wrote this first as a stage play and was shopping around New York, and I just realized this was a film. And it was actually originally a satire. And then I realized it was just too serious a topic to poke fun at. And I realized I wanted to go for the deeper truth of it. And for about, gosh, I think I worked on this for about 8 years with the protagonist being a male, a father. And it was meant to be an homage to my single father who raised me in Victoria, BC. Um, and it was just, we were trying to cast it. And it wasn't quite, I was actually trying to get the script to Clive Owen. And I reached out to my friend Lena Headey, who I'd known for 15 years, and said, "Hey, I got this thing. Will you get it to Clive?" I guess they have the same, I don't know, manager or something, agent. And I told her about it. She goes, "Oh, well, what if it's a mom and it's me?" And I said, "No, no, it's got to be a dad. It's for my dad." And then the writer's strike occurred, and I just couldn't stop thinking about her in the role, and I rewrote it entirely for her, and off we went. And it was just like, now I could never imagined it as anybody but her, and it needed to be a mom, that sort of nuclear love that a mom has for her kid. And so, anyways, there was the very expedited trajectory of how it came to be this film.
Isn't that fascinating? You can spend 8 years locked on an idea, and suddenly
Mhm.
just the one right collaborator comes along and totally reshapes the project. What
Mhm.
were some of the character changes you made to create it, turn it into Nance Redfield as opposed to the father figure? Like once Lena was attached, how did your relationship with her change the movie?
Yeah, I mean, I think what was most intriguing about that conversion was the biggest change I really did was took the word she and hit the S and hit delete. I didn't do a whole lot else, honestly, because I wanted it to be as fully realized the character as I'd had. I didn't want to put her in a box of a mom or a box of a female. She was sort of acting as mom and dad in this family, and I didn't want to change too much. The one thing that had to change the most was her relationship to her boss, because it would have just come across as total sexual harassment the way he talked to the father previously. It would have been strange, and that would have been like felt like something you had to kind of, you know, address and deal with. I didn't want to distract from it, so I actually made their relationship a little bit, I don't know, a little more neutered, I suppose. But other than that, I really didn't change too much. The greatest thing that happened through working with Lena is whenever I cast a film, that's suddenly, or sorry, whenever I cast the lead role, that's suddenly when I know what my film is, and I start leaning deeply into who that person is. Like with my last film, Girl, I really shaped it around who Bella was, and not who she was publicly, who she was personally. Really leaning into who she was and made it feel at least emotionally autobiographical for her. And I kind of started doing the same thing with this one with Lena. Her taste is so elevated that we probably cut 30% of the dialogue. And I knew, because I knew she was going to get so much out of that, profound uh, being that she is, that a lot of that just didn't need to be said anymore. And so and that was her style and taste as well, a bit more of that European minimalism. And so I really started leaning into that. And the film became a bit more quiet and classical, which is kind of how I would describe her artistry, you know? She's not that personally in a way, but her artistry is that.
Before we hopped on, we were talking about the volume and the scope of the movie. You mentioned I learned for the first time that there are two cuts of this. There's actually two different versions. We saw, I think, yours, the director's cut tonight. Can you tell us about some of the differences in each version of the movie?
Yeah, the version that you guys watch is the one being released in Canada, what they're calling the director's cut. That's what was done, what I did when I was completely left alone. Mom and dad just let me make a party. And that's what we released. That's what we finished it. And then I guess the financier suddenly had a realization that it was too much of a drama and he wanted to lean more into this idea of a thriller, which I understood, just from a sales perspective, it made a lot. Dramas are very hard to sell. And so he wanted to do more of a thriller. And so there's another version and because we had more time with it, there's things about that new version that are superior. There's an increased fragmentation to the editing style as she fragments, the visual language starts to get a little more erratic and unpredictable. There's a slight structural change in the new version. There's a whole new opening, an opening that I'm not really keen on. I like the opening of this version much better. But they're different, and I don't necessarily think one is better than the other. This is much more of a day in the life character piece of grief, a meditation on grief, if you will. The other version is a bit more of I'd say like a character-driven thriller. If this one feels emotional, the other one feels more exciting. They're just different.
Mm. How, sorry, how was it that these came to be? How much input did you have into each of the versions of this? Uh, and how did they cooperate together? Like, what was there one key moment that kind of connected the two, or is there a real difference in between in how they're telling the story?
There's not a real difference. It's more in tone and style and feel. The second version, the one that's being released in the States, this I don't know, producer's cut, whatever you want to call it. Um,
Not the house party version.
Not the house party version, which again was just me on my own. But this new version it worked from this version, this original version. So it wasn't a total recut. It was just a slight reimagination of that version. I think honestly, it's 5 minutes shorter without losing any content. That gives you a sense that it's a bit of a pace shift. But honestly, a layman, depending on their mood, might watch it and not even notice much of a difference, other than one felt more emotional, one felt more exciting. But I don't know that it's the same story. It's the same film.
We have several attendees in the audience tonight who are students from both Sheridan and York tonight, all aspiring writers and directors. I'm wondering, can you talk if you were to give advice to this group of students specifically on this idea of making directorial choices when it comes to the editing and the negotiating with producers, how do you how do you have clarity in making decisions for what you want your movie to be?
It's a great question, and one that doesn't get taught, or at least I was never taught this, and learned the hard way. I learned a lot as an actor in this world because, okay, it's two or three things. One is you have to listen to this voice within yourself and trust that, because that's all you have is your taste. That's all you have. Work on it, improve it, doubt it, question it, evolve it. Secondly, is how do you deal with good notes? You take them and you say thank you and you take them. How to deal with bad notes? That's what I learned as an actor. There's an actor, Billy Campbell, who I worked with on this TV show for 4 years, and he had such a great thing. If he got a bad note, he'd say, "Great, thank you, got it, gonna do it," and then he'd just do his version. And and I'm not saying that you want to do that, especially as a director, because you'll just lose your film, you'll lose the cut. But the essence of that is roll with it and tumble with it, use it, find the intention, find the good in what they are doing. Otherwise, you can lose your hand on it. I think there's a quote I heard from Ira Sachs, the filmmaker. He says that art benefits from rubbing up against the friction of commerce, and I think you've got to embrace that. I can remember a moment in my first film, Girl, where we wanted to have a little kitten. She had this little kitten she found at her dad's house, and we couldn't afford a cat for gosh sakes, because you got a cat and there's the Wrangler and then there's the whole we were that low budget we couldn't afford a cat. And someone said, "Well, what about a gerbil?" And it ended up being like a gerbil in a ball that's just like a tumbleweed through the movie at one point. And it ended up being a moment when commerce forced me to create a more inventive, creative choice, you know? And I think you've got to jujitsu every limitation.
I can't decide which of these quotes I love more. Art benefits from the friction of commerce, or you've got to jujitsu the situation. Both of these great advice.
Thank you.
So you're originally from Victoria, so you're Canadian, but you
I
have been
am.
working in the States for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Now, the reason I bring this up is because I believe you shot this whole movie in Sudbury, Ontario, which is about
Hmm.
4 hours from us.
Hmm.
What was it like getting to come back up to, I don't want to say your home, but Sudbury and Victoria share a lot of their kind of rugged wilderness, right? It's kind of a city in the middle of the forest.
Hmm.
What was it like coming up to Sudbury and getting to do your shoot?
Yeah, in fact, I made both my films in Sudbury. And so I feel like I should have an apartment there now. But I mean, especially making Girl, which was a very personal story, even though the story itself is so different from who I am and what I'm about. But emotionally, it was something I really wanted to talk about. And this story too is actually very, you know, there's something very personal about it. So to return to at least to my homeland as a country and telling these stories was surreal. And there was a
Surreal
part
how?
because I've lived in the States for I think 23 years now. I'm 45, so that's more than half my life. And I now feel at home in this country in some strange way, especially strange, what's going on right now. But I to come back to create these personal pieces of art, I suppose, was like going to a gravesite to write a love letter to someone that passed. It's like that kind of emotional return. I come down here, cultivate something based on my, experience of life, and then return to where I came from to express it. I mean, the fact that Sudbury is where I go to realize my dreams might say something about my dreams. I don't know, but it's
That
it's
they're cold?
they're cold and rugged and wild, as you said, rugged wilderness.
What now the cooler thing to me, if I might have my notes wrong here. This movie premiered at Cinefest in Sudbury
Hmm.
last fall for the first time. Is that
Hmm.
right?
That is true. Hmm.
What was the experience like getting to share the movie in the community where you actually shot it? Because most films don't do that, don't get
Yeah.
to, but
Yeah.
just logistically can't. So what was that experience like getting to connect when you premiered it here as well?
Hmm. Yeah, it was surreal. I was staying at the same hotel that we stayed at when we shot the film, and the theater was across the street. It was like where I had, you know, gone to war every day to make the film, and here we were celebrating it. It was a beautiful moment actually, because part of me didn't want to. It was like 3 flights for me to get up there. I was like, oh man, I don't want to do this. I've spent enough time in this town. I'm ready to and then I just, something kicked my butt to say go, and I went, and it was lovely, and so many people like stunt folks who were in the film showed up for it, and the sound guy was there, and yeah, it was beautiful. I felt like I was there to share it with the people who really had their hands on the thing, even if it just during production.
So we're almost out of time. Before I let you go, one of the big questions I like to ask: what is the idea you hope audiences walk away from when they go home to bed tonight, having just seen Ballistic?
It's twofold. One is that there's that line, we don't live in a blender. Well, what we put into the world doesn't go into outer space. So we are responsible for what we create and cultivate in the world. And then secondly is the danger of justice seeking. That whole idea of vengeance is mine, rather than vengeance belongs to God, or however you view that, vengeance belongs to something greater than us. And so often that, you're driving down the road and someone cuts you off and you just want to slam your car into the back of them. Even though that screws you as much as it screws them, there's that sense of like, that's what will make it right. and it's somehow my duty to make that correct. And it's human, and we all feel it. There's nothing, and I think there's a righteous core to that. Justice is a good thing, and we should pursue it. But when we do it in a way that makes us the judge, makes us the prosecutor, rather than admitting that we probably have some things that, really make us the defendant.
Hmm.
Um, I think the more we can look at ourselves that way and not sort of be the judge of others, the more we can actually find unity and love and forgiveness. And so that was sort of her journey, was trying to play judge, jury, and executioner, and realizing that really she was the one who was on trial.
Now, it's unusual that you'd be working on a project for this long, from inception to writing to shooting this now almost 2 years ago when this was first filmed, to now finally seeing its release. How has your perception on this idea of vengeance evolved over time through all those stages, from idea to creation to shooting to release? How has your personal perception on addressing vengeance and justice changed?
Hmm. Oh, I think it's a theme I can now let go of, honestly, because I've explored it in these last two films, Girl and Ballistic, and I feel that they're both simply addressing the danger of such a blind pursuit. And it's funny because I'm actually not a vengeful person. I don't know where this came from. It's something I maybe was seeing in the world, and seeing us in a small dose in myself, but it's not something that I carry heavily. So I don't know honestly why this has even come up in me twice now creatively, but a lot of my themes have really shifted. All of my new films are much more exploring identity as a species, and who are we? Who are we as these weird human creatures? And it kind of digging into a much sort of more global view of things. But um, I think if anything, I just had this. I think I was watching some of these vengeance films where they almost glorify killing the bad guys and riding off into the sunset. I was like, that's a really bad thing to be put into the world. I want to counter that with what vengeance actually tastes like, and it's not sweet.
No, it tastes more like jujitsu.
Yes. Sweaty ghee.
Mr. Chad Faust, thank you so much for making the time to be part of this special event for our local audiences tonight. To everyone in the auditorium, please join me in a round of applause thanking Mr. Chad Faust, writer and director of Ballistic, coming to U.S. cinemas. Do we know when a general release is coming?
The deal's happening as we speak, so I'm not sure.
Coming soon.
Very
Coming
soon.
soon to a theater near you and far away from you. Thank you so much for joining us here for this installment of the OFFA Winter Screening Series here tonight. We have more events coming up in March, and of course, National Canadian Film Day on Wednesday, April 15th. Tickets are free, but they must be reserved in advance, and they are available now. That event sells out every single year. We hope you'll join us next for Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie on March 11th. We'll have a very special project, an appearance for that. We also want to thank our sponsors for making these events possible. Of course, our hosts here at film.ca Cinemas and the gallery upstairs in Milton for their support of tonight's show specifically as well. With that, my name is Tyler Collins. It's been a pleasure to be your host. We hope you get home safely, and we'll see you next time with the Oakville Festivals of Film and Art. Have a good night, everyone.